Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Wentworth. My name is Craig Douglas. I'm a lawyer here in town. I'm also currently serving as the president of the Real Estate Council of Boston.
Great.
We're a nonprofit organization committed to economic development in Central Texas, and we have over 2,000 members representing landowners and all the various industries and professions that serve the real estate business. You're maybe asking why RECA would be interested in this bill. First, I want to make it clear that RECA is not against citizen initiatives or public referenda in general. We have always believed and continue to believe that INR has an important place in our system of government. However, this is about a very particular problem, which, as Senator Wentworth outlined, is the process for putting an amendment to a city's charter on the ballot. We agree that a city's charter is very much like a constitution, and right now it's a lot easier to force an amendment to a city's charter than it is to put an ordinance on the ballot. The threshold for petition-initiated charter amendments is far lower than any other prescribed threshold for citizen-initiated elections in Texas, including lower even than legalizing bingo, which I thought was kind of interesting. The analogy that comes to mind for me is that what if it were easier to amend the Constitution than it is to pass a bill? And unfortunately, that seems to be the state of affairs we have on the municipal level under current law. Since 1997, there have been 5 citizen-initiated charter amendments brought forward in Austin. All but one of them failed, mostly by a fairly large percentage of the vote. Most of these were put on by very small groups, and in some cases the efforts are funded largely by one person. The taxpayers, on the other hand, pay a pretty steep price. For example, the last charter amendment in the city of Austin cost the city about $500,000 to put it on. And then the campaigns to educate voters regarding the effects of these amendments are also very costly. In Dallas, as Ms. Davis was going to testify but had to leave early, there are currently 2 charter amendment petitions underway, causing some members of their city council to ask the same question, whether or not it should be easier to force a vote on an amendment to the charter than it is to force a vote on a referendum. And we believe that the flat 10% requirement allows civic engagement while providing a more realistic barometer of public support. And we appreciate the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions?
No, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I had been involved in those amendment drives in the city of Houston, and I think the threshold is still pretty high. It's very difficult to get that many signatures. It is expensive. It's not always done by one person. Many people contribute, and I have a real issue with taking that opportunity out of the hands of the grassroots. And it may seem low to you, but I think it's a high threshold for the citizens to have an opportunity to have their voices heard.
Well, we think that we don't favor, obviously, taking the requirement away.
But if you make it high enough.
Well, I think it'd just it'd be the same as it would be for a municipal ordinance. In Austin, for example. In Houston, it would still be lower. 15% in the city of Houston is what's required for an initiative there, and at the 10%, that would still be lower than an initiative. So we still feel like it's still a very attainable requirement. We're not in favor of eliminating a complete barrier on citizen charter amendments.
But have you seen many of the other initiatives that do require 10 and 15% or higher?
Yes. Yes, well, just in the last decade or so here in Austin, there have been 2 that were successful. One was a smoking ban that was passed, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago with over 53% of the vote, and then the Save Our Springs ordinance, which was passed in the early 90s with over 63% of the vote. Those were both city ordinances that were put on the ballot itself rather than charter amendments. There was a clear demonstration, sort of an organic groundswell of support for those. Had a lot of support early on, and they carried the day rather handily.
Sure, 2 in 10 years is not a lot, but thank you for your testimony. I understand and respect your position. I'm a real grassroots guy, and I don't want to take it out of the hands of the grassroots.
I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Our next witness testifying for the bill is Craig Douglas.
No,
I'm sorry, that was Craig. Paul Davis is testifying against the bill. Paul, are you here? Paul is not here. Brian Rogers testifying against the bill. Brian? Tell us your name and who you represent.
Yes, my name is Brian Rogers, and I'm a businessman here in Austin, also a founder of ChangeAustin.org. I want to talk about the legislative history. In the last 36 years, 346 home rule cities have enjoyed this right. It was in 1973 in the 63rd legislature where the limit was actually lowered from 10% to 5%. And it passed the Senate and the House with not one no vote. And let me read what it says from the Senate floor. This is a quote. The thrust of the bill, of course, is to make charter petitions feasible, not to make them unreachable by those seeking them. You have to have them high enough so that to prohibit the nuisance value of people bringing frivolous or calling frivolous elections. These seem to be the figures that everyone has agreed on. And that was 5%. And it was passed the Senate 30-0 with presided over by Bill Hobby. One of the reasons that we're having this conversation is because we had Proposition 2 here in Austin that rankled a lot of feathers and aggravated the real estate lobby. What happened in the city of Austin was they went and gave $60 million to finance in tax subsidies for a shopping mall. And it made a lot of us angry. Now, what they're saying is that it was widely defeated. It wasn't. We had over 500 local businesses that supported us. The Travis County Democratic Party, the Travis County Republican Party, Libertarian Party, and the Green Party. They all liked it. Now, we got massacred at the very last by $400,000 in a media blitz sponsored by the mall owner and RICA. But we lost 52 to 48%. But that little loss was actually a gain for the city because since we've had ordinances that have been passed, resolutions that have been passed about transparency that have increased participation in the city and given us more. Now, we had to gather 18,000 signatures, but it's not 18,000 signatures. We had to get 27,000 signatures because people signed the petition. They may not live in the county. They've moved, the bad signatures. So you have to get that much more, 50% more. So we would have the threshold would be raised to 57,000, and that's just not possible. Yes, SOS got 10% signatures back in 1992, but back then you could petition at grocery stores. You could go to H-E-B, Whole Foods, book people and petition, but now you can't. You go to a grocery store, and what do they tell you? They say, I'm sorry, if we let you in, we have to let the Klan in. We have liability issues. Do not set foot on our property. So we're relegated to the bike paths, dog parks, and Congress Avenue. So you cannot get the signatures. 10% puts it out of our limit. In fact, if you look at the city clerk, what the city clerk says, note, because of Austin's large population, the number of signatures needed in a short time frame, it would be difficult for citizens to get enough signatures prior to the effective date. The last gentleman said $500,000. No, it's not true. The net effect to the taxpayer is zero because the county pays less when the city has to pay, and they share the cost. Net effect is zero to the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd like him to explain that again. What's the net effect?
Well, the net effect,
the county and the city.
Yeah, the election cost is fixed. Okay, so I just spoke with Yvonne Franklin from the Deputy City Clerk of Austin. She said, "No, Brian, the cost is fixed. If the city enters into the election, then we have to share with the county. So yeah, the city does have to pay, but the county has to pay less because there's no more machines going out there programmed. But the county goes, aha! So the school district has a bill on there. I mean, a proposition. School district has to share the cost. City has something. Oh, so now we're all in it. But the total cost to the taxpayer is the same. The city just may have to, fork over a little, but the county forks over less.